us the importance of the census and what his role is in it. And I want to thank Joel for being my conduit to get a great speaker. Thank you so much. And the reason we're here is because having a good census is very important to us, because those funds that are allocated to us by the federal government are based on our demographics, our population, where certain people are located, and it's very important that we have an accurate account of the people in our communities, because it affects our health centers, it affects our schools, our fire, and our transportation, which is so important to us. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jerry Lord.
Thank you, Anne. And trust me, the doctor part is it's not a measure of grades. I think it's an index of effort. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today. To be quite honest, I have someone else to thank. I have to thank Joel and a colleague who's not here, Chris Ivan. He is in the same role as I am, as a partnership specialist. And going forward, he might be the person who would interface with the League of Voters because of the way we distribute our territories, the way we serve as liaisons in particular territories. But I am so thrilled to be here today to talk about our upcoming decennial census to an organization that, from what I understand, is poised to celebrate its own centennial in 2020. And for the last 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been absolutely instrumental in being an example of nonpartisanship, civic engagement, and the utmost integrity. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today to talk about the census. And so in doing so, what I'd like to do is give you the good information you need to know. The things that everyone needs to know about. Give me a refresher about the census. What are the key dates? How can we respond? What is our data being used for? And in doing so, I hope there'll be like 3 takeaways, maybe 3 themes you'll see. 1, participate in the 2020 census. Everybody, it's going to be safe, easy, and so important to do, for reasons that Anne mentioned. We'll talk a little bit about that during the presentation. 2, of course, it's civic virtue that compels us to respond to the census. Like, it's virtue that compels us to respond to that jury summons, or to vote. But it's about more than that. It's civic virtue, but it's about community value and community opportunity. It's about ensuring that resources are allocated as justly and as fairly as possible to communities that need them the most. And I'd also like to talk about the jobs that are available. The third theme, gang, we could really use your help. Really. I mean, this is a national initiative. It turns out, outside of war, this is the largest mobilization of people and resources in the United States. And our success at the local level, it depends on people like you, the people in this room, the people who have a pulse in the community, who might be able to be a partner with us, either on an individual level, wherein you tell a friend or family member about the importance of the census or how to respond. You'll be in a trusted voice. You might also consider something we'll talk about a little at the end, which is something called a complete count committee, which may sound very formal, I know, but it's not, and it's one of our best vehicles we have to ensure that stakeholders from around the community can get together and strategize ways that they can ensure a complete accurate count, because it is vital to all our local communities. So again, it's safe, it's easy, and important. It's about community value as much as civic virtue, and I hope we can count on you to be a partner in 2020. But without further ado, please just let me give a brief refresher on the context of the census, and we'll go from there and flesh out some of those points I just mentioned. So, the Census Bureau. Hey, we are the nation's leading provider of quality data about the American people and its economy and its housing. Sometimes though people ask us, what is it that you all do in the 10 years between the censuses? We're actually very busy. We have over 130 programs and surveys going on at any one point in time. Some of these might seem familiar to you, or at least the data they produce. The current population survey, for example, is a joint venture with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So things like the unemployment rate come out of, in part, census data. Part of the reason why the decennial census will be easy is because it's only going to be 10 questions. No long form this year. That's because we have the American Community Survey, which is rolled out on an ongoing basis in the 10 years between the censuses. And that's the survey that takes the deep dive into things like the socioeconomics of the household, or the housing characteristics where people are living. I mean, even down to how long is your commute to work. And so we also have, in addition to our demographic censuses, economic programs and censuses that keep tabs on economic productivity amongst 4 million businesses across the country. So we have a lot going on, and we have a big job ahead of us in 2020. Now, back in the first census, 1790, under the direction of Thomas Jefferson, there was about 650 enumerators on horseback who went around the country and counted approximately 3.9 million people. We flash forward to 2020, we anticipate counting over 330 million people across over 140 million housing units. And we're going to need a temporary workforce of near 500,000 folks to be the traditional census takers who are going door to door to follow up and to do jobs like what I'm doing right here, which is to engage the community to ensure that we have a complete and accurate count during the census. Why is this so important? If we're to reduce things to like a base level, we can say maybe it's about money and power. It's about political representation. Now, I don't think I would be explaining anything new when we bring up the idea of apportionment to folks in this room. The way in which seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are allocated to the states, right? There's 435 voting members in the House. Every state gets 1 member at a minimum. That means 385 seats are then divided in proportion to the population. So if you use the 2010 census data, that meant that more or less for every 650,000 people, there would be 1 congressional seat. I'm not really allowed to talk about how many seats New York gained or lost. I'm not authorized to do that. Suffice it to say, New York does not have representation following the 2010 census that it did after the 2000 census. And we look at local counties, Oneida County for one, Oneida County, and we looked at it under count in 2010. So that's in part why it's so important, to ensure that political representation is fully representative of the population. Additionally, $675 billion are allocated from the federal government every single year to the states. Now we're talking about monies that are available for social service programs that you can see up here, including Medicaid, SNAP, TANF, but also hard services. Monies that go to the Department of Transportation. Monies that are vital to ensuring that there is infrastructure that's representative of the population who contributes to that wear and tear. In addition, I mentioned we are the nation's leading provider of quality data. We want to act like that. We want to be able to provide the benchmark data that is used by governments, by the business community, and local groups to ensure that they are planning the right way, knowing the population with accuracy. So it is important. Why is it safe? Well, for starters, let me say that it's hard to talk about the 2020 census without addressing folks' concern over confidentiality. This, as I'll talk about in just a moment, this is the first census that's online driven, that not only allows people to respond online, but encourages online engagement with the census. And so, we are here to ensure you that any data that is submitted during the census response is encrypted, it is safe, it is protected by the nation's leading infrastructure for cybersecurity. In addition, anyone with the Census Bureau, anyone who's a census taker, anyone who's a partnership specialist, we all swear a lifetime oath. Everyone in the Census Bureau. That's punishable by a fine of up to $250,000 or 5 years in prison if you share anyone's personally identifiable information. We want to make it very clear to folks that we are here to produce statistics and that we de-link people's personally identifiable information from statistics that we produce, and that personally identifiable information cannot be shared with anyone. That any branch of government, not with the courts, not with police, it is fully confidential, it is secured. And so why is it easy? Because there are multiple ways to respond this year. Now, I should also point out that for some folks, it may be easier to apply online. For other folks, it might not be. It might seem a little bit daunting, or there might be issues with internet access. We know that going forward. However, we did want to ensure that there are multiple ways of responding to the census that reflect people's priorities for engagement and also their capacities. And so the way it's going to work this year is that folks are not going to receive a questionnaire needed. Come March, March 20th, March 12th, that's when invitations will go out. asking people to either respond online or respond over the phone. Both of those two ways, over the phone and by telephone, are new to the 2020 census. And people are encouraged to do it like that. In addition, and I'll go over the timeline in just a moment, I have a slide for that as well as a handout. There will be still a series of notifications. Say if folks don't apply immediately during 1 week, there'll be a reminder. Ultimately, come April, if folks, for whatever reason, don't want to respond online or by telephone, a questionnaire will arrive. And it's pointed out that we have only 10 questions on here, only 10 questions, and they're listed on here. I have a handout available that's not a copy of the questionnaire, but it shows the subject of every question and explains to folks why it is that we do ask that question. And please bear in mind the census. If anyone claims to represent the census, they say anything about wanting a social security number, money, donations, anything that's political, it's likely that's a source of fraud. There's no mention of a social security number on the 2020 census. And there's no question pertaining to, could we please have your bank account information to verify your identity, that kind of thing. And it bears mentioning here, we talk about the census being easy. It's also easy because we have multiple languages available for people to respond. I know this is a difficult slide to read up close. But what this points out are 12 questions on the left, 12 non-English languages, pardon me, and folks will be able to apply online utilizing one of those languages on the 2020 website. If they speak Vietnamese, there will be an availability to click on a button and then it'll bring up the questionnaire in Vietnamese. This is also difficult to read. Just please bear with me on this one. So the 12 non-English languages I mentioned are pointed right here. They can apply online. Folks would also be able to call a number, and this will come in the census mailing, and speak to a person on the other end who speaks that native language to ensure that folks are counted and done so in an accurate way. And additionally, this may be the subject for future conversation, but for our approximately 59 other languages, we have things available that will allow people either to do the questionnaire in English using the language guide in their language, or maybe with our community partner with system translation. Again, I know this is difficult to read, but this is to point out that part of the reason why the census is easy to respond to is because there are alternative languages for folks to do so. And this sketches out right here in the slide, something I just mentioned, gives you a brief timeline of when you can expect mailers. So approximately March 12th and 20th, the USPS will be staggering mailers out to about 95% of all American households, again, inviting people to respond. Something I'd like to point out is when it does so, it'll say, okay, you can visit this website, and there'll be a 10 number code there. And you go to the website, you enter in your code, and that'll verify that household that's being responded for. If folks don't know that, please keep this in mind. If people don't know their code, they can still respond online or over the telephone if they have their address and the nearest cross street. Oh, can you go back just for a second, please? And see, folks, you can see here, it's about a week after the initial mailing goes that people start to receive follow-ups. Please respond, please respond. And one thing I want to point out here is that it's going to be April 1st that's Census Day, right? And that's more like a reference point that people use to establish, okay, who is living in the household or who is staying there with nowhere else to go on April 1st. Now, you're going to get your mailer between the 12th and the 20th, and folks can just start responding immediately. It's not like you have to wait until Census Day April 1st to respond. So you can get going immediately, and people will be following up with letters. And in addition, as you can see here, you provide the letter, you get a postcard, you get the letter and a questionnaire. Afterwards, we will still have the tried and true traditional census takers going door to door this census. They won't have all the paper with them to do the work. They'll have a handheld device to be trained with, and they can follow up with households like that and do the 10-question response at that point of contact. So some easy ways to get involved. being a trusted voice, being a census ambassador, being able to share the information about why the census is safe, it's easy, and important. And again, I do have some flyers. I have a flyer packet for everyone here who's interested to take home, so you have good information as a reference in case you get into conversations with folks about the upcoming census. In addition, you can promote our jobs. And you might also, some people in this room might be interested in working with the census themselves. So one of the reasons I'm here, and Joel's here, is to mention that we are hiring. This is the largest mobilization of people outside of war in the United States. We know you need to hire a temporary workforce and do it really quickly. That said, there might be a little bit of hurry up and wait with the application process. But basically, we're looking to hire folks, census takers, for jobs that start at $17 an hour, where folks can be reimbursed for 58 cents a mile. Where there are certain folks, say for example, if they get heat during the winter time, that income would not count against that. So people can make money, they can do some community or national service, and again, make some money on the side. And we're looking for folks who can commit anywhere from 5 to 40 hours. That's why this pitch goes out to everyone. Students who are really engaged civically, people who just want to gig, people who want to get back in the workforce, people who are seniors and want to do something that's important for their country and for their community. There are jobs available. I know in Utica County, they're hiring for approximately 200. I'm not quite sure on Utica what that figure is. But for every 200 that we hire, there'll be 3 for every 1 hired. So we can expect maybe 600 applicants to be called in for an interview. So we do encourage a wide net of folks to be able to apply. The address is right here. It's a completely online portal. You don't need to upload a resume or a cover letter. It's approximately 30 questions.
33 questions.
All right. And is there anything else we should know that's important for people when they do choose to apply online? They need an email address, correct?
An email address is needed, correct. Pretty much that's it, other than your personal information, name, address. They will ask for social because it is a job application. And then the 33 questions probably take 15 to 20 minutes at most.
And it's the same application. It's the same application for people who apply, and they have some different backgrounds, because in doing the general census taker application, it's likely that if folks here apply, you'll be asked, well, would you mind taking 9 additional supervisory questions? So you might be qualified to be a supervisor and not be someone who goes through door to door as frequently. But this is something that we hope people will be interested in, and both Joel and myself are available afterwards to talk more in depth and give you some more specific information about the jobs. I brought some flyers with me if anyone wants to take one with you and share it with the people in your life, at work or at home. We want to cast a wide net, and this is our peak recruiting period. So we hope people will consider serving their country, serving their community, and making a little bit of money while they do it. So briefly, gang, just to show you, we have to keep this ship going. We have initiatives available, as you can see here, that target different communities or different interests. If anyone here is an educator, I'd be happy to talk about the Statistics in Schools initiative afterwards. It's a way of using census data in the classroom to advance teachers' curriculum and see statistics in action. We're in a bit of an education phase right now. We're making our first roads into the community to get people on board with the census. But you can really expect the buzz to start up probably next month in January. You'll start seeing the advertising more frequently in TV, radio, digitally, etc. March 2020, group quarters. So there's a separate count for people who, say for example, are in prison and they live in nursing homes. They live in dorms. Quick point here that might be relevant. If anyone here has or knows someone who has a college-age student who lives off-campus students should not be counted by their folks, and they will not be counted by the college. Off-campus students need to respond to the census online. It's a group of buddies living together in a household. Someone's going to have to answer for them, regardless of whether they're 19 or 39. And so if anyone knows anyone in that situation, perhaps that'll come up in the conversation. You can let them know. Off-campus students need to count themselves. On-campus students will be counted by the university. And again, you can see here, census day, that's like a reference point. Another contingency I wanted to mention in relation to census point, it's come up in previous presentations. And it'll be, well, what do we do if someone shares custody 50-50 of a child? And so we can't really say where is this child staying most of the time. It's where that person is staying March 31st and April 1st. Whoever has custody that night, March 31st and April 1st, that's where the child will be counted. I have an informational flyer here that I'm incorporated in here because counting young children under 5 was actually the most undercounted category in the census in 2010. For a variety of reasons, it's multifactorial, and I do have an informational flyer available. But that's something to keep in mind in case you just have a casual conversation with someone. March 31st and April 1st. And again, it shows here at the bottom, okay, we need to keep the ship going because we need to have our results completed, tabulated, and released to the president by the end of 2020. So everybody, thanks for bearing with me on just getting through some of the main information about the census. I mentioned in the beginning ways in which folks can get involved. We're looking for folks who can get involved at any level if that's possible for you. We want to work with people's schedules. So that might mean being involved with the census is as simple as just telling a friend or family member. Being an informal census ambassador in a way. We could use that contribution to the census. We also have something else available. Now it's something called the Complete Count Committee. Now right now the steps are being taken to form one of these in Utica County. And as you may be able to see on here, I know the print is a little small, but essentially what we're looking for is like a working group of community partners. Groups like this. We look to our elected officials as well. We look to our schools, our faith-based leaders, our community organizations. We're looking to cast as wide of a net as possible. People and stakeholders who can come together per their time and be able to strategize ways in which they can confront issues in their community that might get in the way of a complete count, and then strategize some outreach strategies that might help to get people on board with responding to the census and ensuring that there's not an undercount in the community. Now I know this might sound like it's a very formal or time-consuming thing. It does not have to be. And there's more information to come. I know Chris Ivan has been in contact with other organizations, elected leaders in the community. In post-election, I think that organizational activity for a complete count committee will start to develop. Now, maybe not everyone in this room might be interested, but if there are enough people, perhaps we could have just one person here be a point of contact, and then that might be the start of a conversation with Chris about incorporating the League of Women Voters into a complete count committee. Maybe it doesn't, and that would be okay too. But we are here to say that we hope you will consider being a part of this. Being a part of getting people together to mobilize around a really, really important civic initiative like the 2020 census, where there's so much on the line. Now, to be a part of the census, we can count on us for, in a lot of ways, the language materials that we have. We have informational flyers. We have fact sheets. We have all kinds of promotional material that we're able to share and provide to you. For folks who may be able to do things like use their social media or their organization's website, we have language that we can incorporate into that. We have logos, etc., that show your partner, and that can communicate some of our talking points. We would really, really appreciate if people could use those resources to help us out, because we have resources available to make it an easy thing for you. In addition, I'm available today. I was more than happy to come from Baltimore to you and be a part of this presentation. Believe in the census, and I'm happy to be here. So you can be assured that going forward, whether it's the League of Women Voters, whether it's another organization that you're working for, that there will be a human presence if you need one. Someone from the 2020 census who can speak to the issues, who can provide further clarity on the questions that you might have about the 2020 census. And again, some things that you can do that's easy. Just start a conversation. Or keep it in mind that maybe a complete count committee could be a good fit for League of Women Voters or for some other folks in this room. So a couple things I want to leave you all with. This is the new tool we have here. It's called Grow. And this is something we offer to the public, and we say, well, this could be used for any sort of outreach efforts as part of the census. Hey, anyone in here who has ever done grant development or grant writing, you might find that this is a really useful thing. I'll explain what it is. So what Rome is, if you ever went to that website, you could put in, what is it, 3038 East Genesee Street, I believe. You type in that address. It would bring you down to the census tract level where 303 East Genesee Street is. If you click on a census tract like that, what it'll bring up, move forward, it'll bring this up. You can click on the census tract and it'll bring up some really quick, easy, important facts about that census tract. So socioeconomics, demographics, household characteristics. Really encourage folks to get on here, even if you just have general interest. It is a free tool that's available to understand your census tract and the tracts in your community. You can know them easily and with statistical accuracy. If you go back, thanks, Joe. Again, the reason why this is color-coded up here, that's because the darker the color, that means we consider that census tract the harder to count. All right, so can you go back to the statistics, Joel? Oh, sorry, thanks. So if you're ever out there, I just want to point this out, please. See how it says a low response score and it's 31%? What that means is that we anticipate approximately 31% of folks in that census tract to not respond at all. So that means that census tract will be undercounted by approximately 30%. That number is a baseline that we use to help track our success in mobilizing people to respond. But I want to let you know, to explain that, that's statistic in context, pardon me. And then if you can go back. And then you can see that low response score that correlates with the darker green area. So I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on that. I just wanted to let you know that this is a free public tool. It's enormously useful. And to just put it in a little bit more context. That information packet that I have for everyone here, that does have a handout on Rome that can explain it a little bit more fully, and you can appreciate it maybe in your own time.
It's 31% of the households that you have addresses for. Is that how you determine the 31%?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be a little more difficult, of course. Yeah, there's like logarithmic calculations, but the number that we're left with, that 31, that's the anticipated number of people, households we've identified, where we believe people are living there, and we believe 31% in that census tract will not respond. We're basing that in large degree on how people have responded to the American Community Survey, which I noted at the beginning, that's the survey that replaced the census long form. And so based on how people did or did not respond to that, that goes into the calculation of how we anticipate people responding or not in 2020.
Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Right? First of all, we have a lot of refugees here, and we have refugee centers. Plus, we also have a lot of municipal housing. Is it possible to have people go to these places and talk to the people? Or, I know you have methods of how you're going to send the information out, but we have a lot of this here.
Absolutely.
So that's something that has to be, because I'm an adult. So I mean, what I'm trying to say, we have a lot of people that are not going to answer you online. And if you're going to mail it back, I'm going to ask another, so you put a stamp on it, or is it going free?
Right.
These are things to consider too when you're dealing with this.
Absolutely.
But I think that if you have all this municipal housing and these refugee centers and places like that, to send somebody, you could use it.
Absolutely. And the folks who...
Those are my thoughts.
And those are wonderful thoughts. And it speaks to why we need partners on the ground. Because there's only so much distance a message can go when it's coming from someone like myself. Right? I might go to refugee nonprofits that serve refugee communities in Utica. And I might speak to them in the face about confidentiality. People might go, right, who are you? Okay. I might not be the trusted voice. Right? And so that's why we need to engage with community partners across all sectors, including people who work with refugees, to let people know, yes, it's safe, it's easy, it's important. there are language materials available so that people can respond in their own language. There might be these nonprofits that have computers they can bank away during the response season, so people know that, but, oh, I know I'm just talking hypotheticals. But that's why we need to engage everyone, to your point.
Well, this is why, as you're talking, I'm thinking about these different things here with the people that I see and know.
Absolutely. And so this is like the beginning of the conversation. And to be quite honest, especially because it's coming from a position where I get the view from 30,000 feet, it may seem almost like naive for people who do the living and working in this community and have done so for years. They know what animates people, what motivates people to respond or to not respond or to engage with officials, the government, etc.
Because we come to a point in some of the areas where people won't open the door every day. I know this for a fact, okay? So you do have to reach them, so there are other alternatives how to reach them.
And that's what comes in the strategy, that people, if we get people together. And I'm just using a specific example here about refugees.
I just had expressed myself.
And you brought up such great points about, well, we have gaps as far as where our outreach efforts can land and where they can have like a resonance or something. And this needs to be an ongoing conversation.